Well, joining us now for more is Reserves Brigadier General in the IDF, Professor Jacob Nagel, the former head of Israel's National Security Council and the former acting National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu, now a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, speaking to us from the town of Rosh Hashanah in Israel. And Professor Nagel, thank you for joining us. Let's start by looking at those comments today by the head of the IAEA about Iran's enrichment. Now, you wrote an article this week in the Jerusalem Post discussing how Israel should approach the current situation involving the talks. And you focused on the role you think the IAEA should be playing moving forward. Maybe talk a little about that.
Sure. First of all, I want to put one point on the table. I heard what the DG Grossi said. It's very important. One important point is that is saying that Iran is continuing to violate the agreement. None, Europe, Russia, China, none are doing anything. But I won't give too much emphasis. Of course, it's very disturbing. I don't put the biggest emphasis of the 60% like I didn't put it on the 20% in the past. It's not good, it's bad, but the Iranians are doing it just, they will have another chip to bargain in the table. I am much more bothered things that happened since 2015 that I think it was a horrible agreement. But then, 5 years later, no one wants to learn. The same people that did the mistakes of 2014-15 negotiations are sitting again in the table. So for sure, they want to defend their so-called child. People like Robert Malley, Wendy Sherman, some others. Now, the problem is that things happened since 2015, and we learned special two things. First of all, about the weaponization, the situation of the Iranians in the weapon system, and of course, in the advanced centrifuges, that they will be able in the next 6, 7, 8 years of the agreements, not to break out, but to sneak out, because they will have centrifuges that no agreement is going to take them back. And I will emphasize on one sentence that Grossi said, is that he said, we cannot put the demon again in the battle. They advanced, they are now in a situation much advanced than in the past. Some people will say it's only because Biden left Trump left the agreement in 2018. I don't agree. They advanced also before he left the agreement. Yes, after he left, they advanced more. So this is one thing. Now, the IAEA found out 4 breaches of Iran, started with the big mistake of the 2015 agreement called the giving up of the PMD, the possible military dimensions. They gave it up all. Now, there are rumors that during this negotiation rounds, I hope that the United States won't give also this one up. They want also, please, let us go about all these IAEA investigations. If they will do it, you can close the organization. They are doing one of the good things about the agreement was they said it's the unprecedented monitoring, verification. What is the meaning of unprecedented monitoring and verification? If when you find something, you go, you visit a site, you find a violation, and one day before the IAEA is publishing a report, someone from the United States is calling and telling him, if you do it, it will it will be very hard in Vienna. So this is one thing I will really want to emphasize. And of course, at the end, United States is the biggest ally of Israel. So we agreed not to agree on Iran, but there are a lot of other things that we have to make sure that we are on the same line with the United States.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because there was a blast at a petrochemical factory in Iran in the southern province of Bushehr, which is also the site of the major nuclear facility. It was reported today. Reports that one person was killed in an explosion. Now, of course, this is the latest in a series of blasts and malfunctions at sensitive facilities in Iran. Some have been blaming those on Israel. I'm not going to ask you to relate to that specific incident. But I will ask you about the point of whether, if the U.S. comes to an agreement and together with other world powers with Iran, whether Israel will feel free to act against Iran under those circumstances and how it should respond or relate to that with the United States.
I couldn't ask for a better question. One of the reasons that very high-ranked officials like Meir Ben Shabbat and Yossi Cohen and others went to the United States, and I'm sure this is exactly what Secretary Blinken, great guy, great friend, I was his counterpart in the strategic dialogue. I'm sure this is what he heard in Israel, and this is what everyone is hearing, is that Israel is not going to be obliged by any agreement that will come out in Vienna, no matter what will be written. Israel is not going to allowing Iran to become nuclear. And if we have difference of opinions, because I think Israel and United States want the same goal. It's a difference on opinion how to reach this goal. We don't believe that there is another way. We believe the Iranians when they say they want to annihilate Israel. You can see the missiles written on it. Israel must be wiped out. So Israel will be free, full free, to do whatever it needs. It will be tough, because if there is an agreement, and Israel, as was written by some reporters, I cannot ignore or say that it's right, is that Israel told the United States, we are not going to give you an advance notice if we will decide to do something. Now, there is the war between wars, something that we're doing in Syria and Lebanon when they breach one of our 3 red lines, like terror on our borders, sophisticated weapons, mostly PGMs, precise guided munitions to Hezbollah via Lebanon, or Iran forces establishments in Syria. If something happened, Israel doing the same goes for the Iranian nuclear program. Sometimes we take responsibility, sometimes not. Now, not everything that is happening in Iran, some accidents, some things that are happening in any normal places, not everything in Israel, it's Israeli. Maybe nothing is Israeli, but Israel in those cases is not taking responsibility. We'll
have to, Professor Nagel, we'll have to leave it at that. All options are on the table, as they say, Professor Jacob
Exactly,
Nagel.
all options, and I hope United States.
Thank you for joining us. We'll have to leave it at that.